Welcome guys to another video. We are on the roof of our shop today. It's a beautiful day out, so I decided to get in front of the sun. I'm very pale, trying to do something about that. So here we are on the roof. The idea of today's video, guys, is just to have a quick look at the fundamentals of shooting. We're just going to touch on each topic. Each one of these fundamentals we can quite happily speak for flipping 2 days about. We can really get into the nitty-gritty nuances and the details. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to touch on it. So for the more experienced shooters, this is probably just going to be a nice little review, a little recap for you guys. For the guys that are still getting into it, that are still kind of working out that basic marksmanship, hopefully you get a little bit of value in it. Maybe pick up 1 or 2 tips and tricks that will hopefully help you shoot more accurately, quicker, and with more confidence. So yeah, guys, without any further ado, let's get into the first fundamental, which is going to be stance. All right, guys. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is stance. This is an unloaded blue gun for those that are watching. For any range Nazis that want to comment on my blue gun, feel free. Anyway, so guys, the first stance that we're going to have a look at that was taught over the years, it's an old military stance. It is the isosceles stance. Now, how that looks from the front is your feet are about shoulder width apart like this, slight bend at the knees, slightly forward. That's literally what the isosceles stance looks like. Now, this is fantastic for if you're shooting at paper targets, you're shooting at bowling pins, that type of stuff, stationary targets that aren't fighting against you. From the side, what that looks like, once again, feet round about shoulder width apart, slightly bent at the knees, slightly angled forward like that. Now, this is a nice balanced stance on your x-axis, right? So if somebody had to come and push me on my left or my right shoulder here, I can take that force without falling over. However, if somebody has to push me on my y-axis, all of a sudden I don't actually have a lot of stability. You'll notice that just like a tripod, I'm not calling myself a tripod, but I do not have stability over here, which is not good. So what we always advocate for is what we call a modified isosceles stance. Now, all that you do is your support leg, right, drops back just about a foot. Literally, that is all that we're going for. So now we have a nice central stance. So our center of gravity is truly center on our x-axis, but also on our y-axis. So what this allows us to do is have stability. If I'm pushed from the left or the right, I can take that up and forwards and backwards. Also, what this allows me to do is move quickly in any direction. From the isosceles stance, left and right, all good. If I want to move to my left, I push off of my right foot because you see that my center of gravity is in between. If I had to move quickly to my left or my right with my feet right next to one another, it's not going to happen because I do not have any kind of stability. Likewise, if I want to move forward, this is not a great stance to actually start moving forward from because I need to reposition my feet to kick off. If I want to move back very, very quickly, I'm going to have to also shift my weight slightly before I kick off. In the modified isosceles, I can move quickly in any direction. Left, right, forwards, I kick off my back foot, and I can backpedal nice and quickly. I push off of my front foot, and I can move back really quickly. Another big benefit is changing levels and that type of stuff. So if I'm on target, it's very simple for me to change levels, to walk, to maneuver, while keeping my muzzle on target. Whereas if I'm trying to maneuver in the isosceles stance, it's just not fluid enough. It's just not very ergonomic. Lastly, the modified isosceles stance sets me up for combatives. So a lot of the time, especially in our modern day civilian lives, we don't have the luxury of time and space. A lot of the time we are faced with opponents that are within arm's length of us. There was an interesting stat that came out of the Maitland morgue a little while ago. Something like 97% of gunshot victims had powder burns on them. Now what this means is those people were shot within a meter. So it's not like the old school military setting where the isosceles stance comes from, where if somebody is shooting at us from a building down there or a building over there at 70 meters away, then by all means we can take position and we can get our isosceles stance, absolutely no issue. Keeping in mind that this would have been our secondary weapon platform in any case. We'd be blasting them with an R1 rifle. So that type of training wasn't very pistol centric. Today we're dealing with threats at this type of range. If this guy's trying to bail into me with a knife and I think that I'm going to set up in my isosceles stance and get anything right, I'm sorely mistaken. First of all, I'm probably going to land up on my back, and that's probably where I'll die. In a modified isosceles, however, I can create distance, I can push, I can pull, I can strike, I can move quickly in any direction. Think about this. If somebody were to slap you in the face, how would you square up to them? Like this? I hope not, because you'll lose that fight, or you're going to take a little bit more of a combative fighting stance. I think that speaks for itself. Hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. Our training is never my way or the highway type stuff. So obviously within what we train, there are many different ways that you can do it correctly. There are obviously incorrect ways of doing things, but then there's a couple of right ways to do it. So watch out for guys that try and give you my way or the highway type training. But hopefully the principle makes sense to you, and yeah, hopefully you find some value in it. All right, guys, so the second fundamental that we're going to have a look at is grip. Now, grip is incredibly important because when you're shooting a handgun, best case scenario, you're going to have two hands on the gun, 2 contact points. It's not like a rifle or a shotgun that you've got 4 contact points. So you need to make sure that you are gripping this firearm correctly. Now, there's a couple of small little things here that are going to make a really, really big difference. So let's have a look at gripping the firearm with our strong hand first. So I'm right-handed, which means that my right hand is going to go to the gun as far as possible. You don't always have this luxury, but we're going to cover that in another video. So the first thing that I want to do is make sure that the web of my hand goes as high up into the tang of the pistol. That's this back part over here, the tang of the weapon like that, and you can see that there's absolutely no gap over there. What this means is I've got a very low bore axis. The barrel is as close to my wrist as possible while still allowing the firearm slide to move. So you can also notice that if I hold my hand like that, you'll notice that the slide is in line with my wrist and my forearm. I can almost balance it like that. That's the second part of the grip that we want to make sure that is in place. We need the slide to be in line with our forearm. You can see this is completely off. That's wrong. The slide is not in line with my forearm. It's missing completely. My poor little thumb is doing all the work here. It's having to hang on for dear life. So that's what we want. All right. So this is what it looks like from that side. We can see one nice straight line coming down here. It doesn't have to geometrically line up, but we can see it's pretty much straight. From the other side, that's what it looks like. Now, let's have a look at applying our support hand. Right, now if we keep our hand in that type of position with our thumb up, we can have a look at somewhere between that first and second knuckle, that part of our index finger. What I want us to try and do is make contact with the trigger guard at the bottom, like that, nice and high. I want our support palm then to fold in to this part of the grip, both thumbs facing forward, the back of my support thumb touching the front of my strong hand thumb. Now, there's a couple of different ways of doing this. Some people are going to tell, especially the guys that have done previous military service and whatnot, they're going to say, no, but we were taught to keep our left index finger on the trigger guard. Guys, this is for cold weather conditions where you've got big thick gloves on. That's the purpose of that, and that's fine. If you're going to shoot accurately and consistently like this, by all means, don't let anyone tell you not to do it. The only problem that we see with this is when we apply pressure, that does sometimes pull you off of target slightly, whereas this, you don't have that same issue. So I personally like this grip. What we can see here is we've got as much flesh on the firearm as possible. So what we're trying to do here is control energy. Now, if you've ever shot a firearm one-handed, you'll notice that when the shot goes off, it doesn't recoil just up, right? It actually pops out the side as well because energy is escaping from this part over here. So once we've got our grip like that, the pressure that we need to apply very much like a firm handshake. You don't want to pop fuss it, but you also don't want to give it that death rattle, because that's also not going to be very good. The tighter that you grip your firearm with your dominant hand, you'll notice the less dexterous you actually are with your trigger finger. So you need to find that kind of balance for yourself, where you've got a firm grip, you're able to shoot this firearm one-handed, for example, and still be nice and dexterous with that trigger finger. So that's kind of like the happy medium that we're going for. Just to recap again one more time, nice high grip in the tang. So we've got a low bore axis. This is an example of an incorrect grip. You'll notice that there's a big gap over here. What this is going to do is create an unnatural pivot point. So the recoil is going to be a lot more severe than it needs to be. And also my basic pointability is going out of the window, right? Because you take any human being from a, infancy, we can point at things. I don't have to aim the sights of my finger up if I'm going to point. If I'm going to point at the camera, there it is. I don't have to take my time and get my finger on. So we use that same ergonomics with a handgun. If I'm pointing at something, fantastic. Look how close my finger is to the barrel. Now, unfortunately, we can't hold the pistol like this, which would be even better because the slide needs to work. So, nice low bore axis, high grip, touching the trigger guard at the bottom, left palm or your support palm rolling in, making contact with as much of the pistol as possible, both thumbs facing forward, and that's a good grip. Alright guys, so the next fundamental we're going to have a look at is going to be probably the most important one when we're talking about accuracy, and that's going to be the trigger squeeze. So for this one, unfortunately, our little blue gun will not work. Let me just quickly show everybody at home. We are working with a safe pistol. There's nothing in there. The camera is on a tripod. I'm not going to be pointing at the camera for this one. I'm going to be pointing towards the poor signage, probably, but just to show you guys that. There it is. So let me put that away just for a moment. Before we even think about putting our finger on the trigger, we need to know where to put this trigger and finger connection. So what we want basically, right on the first pad, right in that first digit, if this is the trigger, this is our finger, that is where we want the connection to happen. Not too far back, so we don't want to booger hook the trigger like that, because that is more than likely going to pull you off of target. And we also don't want it right on the tip of our finger, because that might push us off of target. We want a nice, consistent, and therefore accurate finger placement on the trigger. Now, once we have got our finger placement, like so, we need to understand the trigger. Now, every single pistol is going to have a slightly different trigger. You'll notice that on most of your striker fires, you've got this wall. We call it the wall. The wall! It's that little bit of play before the trigger breaks. What we always want to do is make sure that we press against the wall first. We do not want to take our finger from all the way off of the trigger and just jerk onto the trigger like that. That is one part of flinching. The second part is obviously the anticipation of the shot, which you also don't want to do. So how this looks is we press against the wall and then we squeeze through. Simple as that. Semi-automatic pistol, right? Semi-auto, so that means that the weapon will cycle by itself. You can catch the link. So when we release the trigger, you should hear the audible click. We release, 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 click. We're now on the wall. So we can just apply pressure and let the shot ring off again. You can see that. I'm not having to release it all the way out. This is wasted time. If that does happen, not a problem. I must just press against the wall once again before the shot breaks. And guys, quite simply, that is going to be trigger squeeze. If we can have a look at maybe one more angle, and I'll try and keep this in focus, and in fact I'm going to point in this direction so that you guys can actually see what's going on over here. Once we've got our solid grip, finger places on the trigger like that, you press back against the wall, and you'll notice how if you have a correct trigger squeeze, the pistol will not move. If you're going to be jerking the trigger, you'll notice that you get a little bit of barrel whip, and if you're going to properly flinch and anticipate that recoil, obviously the shot is going to appear low on the target. Now, just a little thing about recoil is it's going to happen regardless of whether you like it or not. So you're not doing yourself any favors by trying to counteract it. Now, I'll also just say that flinching is a natural human reaction. It's exactly the same as if you're driving a vehicle down the road and your car is pulling slightly left. What do? Hopefully you said pull slightly right, otherwise you're coming off the road. Same thing with a pistol. When the shot goes off, you know that you're going to experience recoil, right? Your vehicle's pulling left. So what do? You pull right. You counteract that recoil. But recoil is only felt once that bullet has left the barrel. So remember that. If you have to take a nice slow-mo video of a pistol firing, you'll notice that the bullet exits the barrel. Then what happens is the slide will start to move forward. Once it hits the back of its cycle, it recoils. So you think that you are going to counteract recoil by dipping your muzzle. You're going to dip, the bullet fires, and then the recoil is felt. So once again, what we want is a nice, clean break every single time. And guys, that is pretty much trigger squeeze. Thank you, Nathan. Now, very, very important, we're going to have a look at aiming. So aiming consists of two sub-fundamentals. The first one is going to be your sight alignment, and the second part of aiming is going to be your sight or your target picture. So let's have a look at sight alignment first, and I'm going to do my best to explain this at the type of distance that we're filming. If you would like some more clarification on this, drop us a message or come join us for a class. So quite simply, what sight alignment is correctly aligning your front and rear sight with one another with no real target to aim at. So what you basically want to do here, and I'm going to point at the camera, guys, this is not a real gun, it's not loaded, so calm down. Also the camera is on a tripod for all of those range Nazis that might be watching. So what I'm going to do now, after we've got a solid stance, solid grip, I'm going to punch the gun out in front of my face, directly in line with my eyes. So what you should be seeing at this moment in time is you should be able to see that the front sight is perfectly leveled with my rear sight, and there's equal spacing on the left and the right hand side of this guy when I line it up with my rear sight. So this is obviously very incorrect. My front sight is way higher than my rear sight. Over here you'll see that my front sight is way lower, which means that I'll shoot low on my target. If my front sight is left of the rear sight, you'll notice that I'll be shooting left, and the same for the right. So what we want is a nice centered sight. On our proficiency courses, what we usually recommend is that we close our weak eye and only aim with our dominant eye. What this does is it takes away a whole dimension of complexity and allows you to purely focus on that front sight, which is where you need to be focusing when you are aligning your sights. You cannot focus on the back plane or on the target. You must focus on the middle plane, which is going to be this guy over here. So if I were to draw a nice straight line, picture this. My eyeball is over here, directly behind the back sight, so my vision is looking straight through the notch on the rear sight, directly into the front sight, so this and this are perfectly level and perfectly centered. And then we're going to have a look now at the second part of this aiming, which is going to be our sight or target picture. This is where we look past the front sight at our target. So now there's one straight line between our eye, our rear sight, front sight, and target. Now there's two schools of thought. The introductory method, which is once again closing your weak eye, aiming with your strong eye, making everything a lot easier. Only problem with this is you're not setting yourself up for, you're not very combative at this point, because what you're doing by closing one eye is you're losing all of this peripheral vision. You're also losing your ability to pick up speed and depth. So the second school of thought, and this is the one that we always strive and we try and move towards, is going to be shooting with both eyes open. So what both eyes open is going to allow you to do is have full use of your peripheral vision, as well as pick up speed and depth perception. So how we do this is your dominant eye is going to kind of hover around the front sight, referencing the back sight, making sure that these bad boys are aligned. And your support eye is going to be filling in all the blanks. Now, this takes a little bit of time to master at first, but with enough practice and correct method applied, this will become second nature to you, and you'll be able to look at anything, produce your weapon, and just punch it out, and your sights will be perfectly aligned. So people at a certain point in your shooting career, you'll be able to kind of just have your sights there as a reference. A lot of people train, they actually take their sights off of their pistol and they're still pretty accurate because they've pointed this firearm thousands of times. Lekker guys, okay, so the last two fundamentals I'm going to do in one because they are so quick and easy to follow. Back to our blue gun. So the last two that we're going to have a look at is breathing and follow through. Guys, when we're talking about defensive breathing, just breathe. Right, I'm going to be honest with you, at the distances and the intensity that we reach when we are engaged in gunfighting, there's no real technique that I'm going to tell you to do. It's when you're shooting those long, detailed shots that will, in the middle of your out breath. When you've got somebody storming you, trying to murder you with a knife, guys, just breathe. Just make sure that you've got oxygen coming into your lungs. If you do find yourself hyperventilating, short of breath, that type of thing, we can do three, they call it combat breathing. It sounds, really tactical and Rambo, but all that it is, it's 3 deep breaths in. Now, there's a couple of different ways. Just, guys, fill your lungs up. Doesn't look very glamorous, I know. Maybe Tim can put a filter on, probably not though. What that's doing is it's just resetting your breathing, okay? Because the short, shallow breathing is not doing you any favors. It's pushing up your cortisol levels. It's going to make you lose fine motor skill. Open those airways up, open your lungs, fill them up, out. Only 3 times, otherwise you are going to become a little bit dizzy, but breathe. Simple as that. Follow through, very, very important. Simply what follow through is, and I'm going to point at our camera again, is once the shot has fired, bang, I'm not directly and immediately coming off of my gun. Bang, bang, bang. That is an example of not following through. Follow through, bang, bang, bang. And I'm staying on target for that second or two, confirming my hits, and I can then climb off. And that really is very, very simple. This is incredibly important in a defensive setup, because let's say Tim decides that he doesn't like me anymore. I've stolen his last Monster energy drink or whatever, and he decides that I deserve to be stabbed. He runs at me. I need to defend myself with my firearm, and I fire one shot and I climb off my gun because I'm thinking, well, he's probably not going to take more. Little do I know that he's actually climbed into 3 tick lollies. I'm a tick. I steal your TV and your dryer and your laptop. And one shot is just not going to do it. He's now pretty much on top of me, slashing at my throat, because I've climbed off of my pistol. Another way that we could have done this is bang, not working, bang, 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 and then climb off after I've confirmed these hits. And that's follow through, guys. Lekker, guys. So that basically brings us to the end of our basic fundamental video. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can say about each one of these fundamentals. The idea was just to give you kind of like a broad overview of the things that have to be in place for you to be able to shoot well and fight well. So let's recap on that really quick. So the very first one, we're going to make sure that we are set up in a combative stance. Pretty much how I'm standing right now. It doesn't look very aggressive, does it? No. But I am able to jump forward, backwards, to the side. I can drop levels. I can throw a punch. I can pull somebody. I'm stable on my feet because, once again, I've got X-axis and Y-axis stability. So from this, we haven't covered this in the video, but I can go from this nice interview stance. Hey, listen guys, calm down. Let's be rational about this. Let's not pull knives. You're going to pull a knife and my draw stroke is already complete. I've got a nice, decent grip on my pistol from the get-go. We will do other videos where we have a look at draw stroke, setting up for that and whatnot, but my grip is how it should be. We can all see that. My sights are trained on my target. I've got my sights aligned and I'm on target. I'm breathing normally throughout. My finger is going to be pressed on the trigger, take away the slack. I'm going to break the shot, bang, and I'm directly back onto my target for any follow-up shots that need to be there. And that's pretty much the fundamentals, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please comment. And yeah, we look forward to sharing some more hopefully beneficial content in the future. Thanks for watching.